I'm just going to do a little shot of this. 2-inch tube steel, 3/16. There are 24-foot lengths. That's what I am going to be building the tables for the bandsaw out of, the framework. It was kind of a spur of the moment. I had planned on going down there sometime today and maybe picking it up, but a guy called me this morning. If you've seen my past videos about having to modify the jack posts for houses, the guy called me this morning and wanted me to pick up 16 of them. So I shot down there and picked them up. And then I called him up and I says, well, you know, as long as I got them on the trailer, why don't I just deliver them to your site so that you can have them there instead of having to transfer it over to your trailer. Probably get started on that pretty soon. The other thing that I want to do is get that conduit that's going to go over there and feed the power supply for this. But at the same time, now I've got that ball door grinder, I am probably gonna be running a power supply for that. I haven't even looked at it, to tell you the truth, so I do know it's 220. Whether it's 220 single phase or 223 phase, I'm not sure yet, so I've got to look at that. But if I'm going to be running conduit overhead, which I do have the lift here. If I'm going to be running conduit, I might as well run it all at the same time. So there's two things that I want to do over here as far as electrical. Actually, three things. The power supply for the bandsaw. I want to get a plug, a 110 or 120 volt plug onto that wall. And I also want to get light up in between those two overhead doors. Now, you know, I understand why he kind of cut the lights back from the end of the overhead doors, because once you get them near the overhead door and the overhead door is up, it blocks all the light from it. But what you really should do is put lights between the doors and around the sides of the doors, so that you have light in this, more light in this area. But anyways, I'll bring you back. Okay, so what I'm going to be starting to do is cut some of the tube steel for the lead-in, lead-off tables for the bandsaw. Now, this is my old bandsaw, and this is how I'm going to have to cut it. And as you can see, I had to pull it out farther so that I could get the stock down in front of the mill. And it puts it way off of the wall. That's exactly why I didn't want to bring it over here. The other bandsaw, the big bandsaw, I didn't want to bring over here, is because it would be out so far to get long. I didn't know whether you wanted to see it actually cutting, but there is the cut on it. The bandsaw works fairly good. It makes a fairly straight cut. The biggest issue with this bandsaw is there's no way to adjust the cut going down. Logically, you can, with the jaws on the thing, you can adjust the cut so that it cuts straight parallel with the blade, but up and down perpendicular, well, yeah, perpendicular to the blade, I guess. There's no way to adjust the saw. Which kind of makes it a pain in the butt, but you know, you got to deal with it. just it won't cut really large stuff. And the large stuff, what I've had to do before is like large tube steel, I've had to make 2 cuts on it, like the legs for the welding bench. What I did is had to make 2 cuts on it, and you know, cut one side, get to the distance of the bandsaw, and then flip it over and cut the other side. And you can kind of make it work. You know, grind it off a little bit and make it work, but it's kind of a pain. This is the start of the frame for the lead-in table of the bandsaw. There's a couple of things that I've welded up the outside, the internal or the external frame of it. So the rectangular outside is welded up. These 2 cross member pieces in here haven't been welded yet. They're kind of on the table and in position, and what I was going to do was going to film some of that welding yesterday, and the battery died on the camera, so I got tied up with other things and never filmed it after I got the battery charged, so that's why it's not welded. There's a couple of things that I want to kind of discuss about it. Originally, I had said that I was going to make it 16 inches wide because that's the width of the cut of the bandsaw, or what I'm assuming is the width of the cut of the bandsaw, until I actually get a piece of stock in there, something that I can judge it with to see exactly how wide it will cut. I'm not really sure, but what I ended up doing is making this table wider than that, and it's actually, I think it's 22 inches is what I made it. Let me just double check that. Yeah, it is 22 inches wide. Now, there's a reason that I did that. I wanted the stability of the lead-in table, so I wanted it a wider footprint on it. I'm going to have 6 legs coming down from it, and what I've done is I ordered some leveling pads from McMaster-Carr for both the lead-in and lead-out table, and also for the bandsaw. The lead-in and lead-out tables, I got 1/2-inch threaded leveling pads for them. So it's got a 1/2-inch, 1/2-13 thread on it. On the bandsaw, I don't even know if you can see it over there. The bandsaw over there, I got 5/8, 5/8 11 threaded leveling pads for that. So I got them ordered and they will be coming in. But anyways, I'm going to have 6 legs on this one. And I made it a little wider, as I was starting to say, for 2 purposes. To add stability, as I said. But my other thing is, I kind of think we'll probably use the lead-in table for laying out material too. So I wanted to make it a little wider so that I would have bigger surface area to set material on, do measurements, marking, stuff like that. So that's the kind of my reason for that. Now the lead-out table is only going to be 16 inches wide, but the lead-out table is also going to be kind of configured differently because I have to compensate for that stop gauge that's on the bandsaw. Might as well take you over there and show it to you. You probably know it. It's that rod right there. So the table, that's a stop gauge, and it just pivots up to so that you can cut material, same pieces of material to the same length. You know, you just set that stop gauge and it just swivels back down. So I've just got to make a opening in the lead-off table that will compensate for being able to use that. The other thing that I'm going to do is the other reason why I made it a little bit wider is there's going to be a piece of angle iron on the back side of it that's going to be in the same plane as the back rest of the bandsaw, or the back jaw of this bandsaw, so that you can line up pieces on the angle iron is the same as the back jaw. So it's going to be like a stop in the back for people, or for pieces that you won't go back. So that is probably what that'll probably be, is like a piece of 1.5 inch angle iron against the back of it, and that will still give me, since it's 2-inch tube steel, it'll still give me some room to support the expanded metal on that I'm going to use for the base. I don't know whether I'd mentioned that before, but what I'm going to do is use expanded metal. One of the other things I'll discuss with you is that I don't really think that I think there's too much of a gap between these pieces. So, but what I'll do is, if there is, I'll fill the in-between gap with pieces of angle iron, so it's at the same height as the table. And when expanded metal comes in a variety of different ways. So this is raised expanded metal, and it's just like it says, it's raised. Now this is flat expanded metal, so the surface of it is actually flat, and that's what I'm planning on using, that flat expanded metal, not the raised surface expanded metal. But anyways, I'm going to be doing some welding on that. I've got a couple of other things that I've got to jump onto here this morning, but as soon as I start the welding, I'm going to set the camera up and show some of the welding on it too. And again, I ordered those legs today, so I'm sorry, the adjustable support for the legs today from McMaster Car. So I'm assuming probably the middle of next week they'll be in. But I'll bring you back for welding. Okay, here we go. Just going to do a couple of welds on this for you. Okay, this is one of the legs that I've got tacked on. Now, what I'm gonna do, I've designed it so that the leg is about a 1/2 inch short of the bed. That will give me allowance for raising it up a little bit, just to over what the after the leveler pads have been put on. It'll give me a little bit of allowance to raise it up. So I've got leveler pads, 5/8 going onto the bandsaw, and 1/2 inch on these. So I've allowed another 1/2 inch for just to raise the table up over what I can do the bandsaw. Now, given the fact that these leveler pads, the 5/8 and 1/2 inch threaded rods on them, are 4 inches long, I've got plenty of room to work with, but I just wanted to make it like that, so I have a little bit of leeway between the two of them without having to adjust all of the rods. What I did is, on this side, I've held it a little bit shy of the end. And this is the side that's going to butt up against the bandsaw. And I just held it a little bit shy so that there wouldn't be any interference with the leg side and the bandsaw frame. On the other side, I will bring the legs out flush with the end of it. So what I'm going to do is, on the bottom where the leveler pads are going to go, I'm going to, I think I've got some 2-inch wide plate steel around here. I'm going to cut them 2 inches long, make a little, or make a hole in the center of it, and weld a nut on the back side of it. So then flip it over. So the nut is going to be internal to the table leg, and then I'm just going to weld out that plate. But I will show you that when I get to it, but that's probably a ways off. I've still got to cut out pieces for the rest of the legs on this table, cut out the rest of the other table, kind of come up with a design for notching the lead out table around that post, that stop post that for cuts. So I just want to show you, I've just got this thing tacked up. What I did is squared it both ways, and just tacked it. When I weld it out, I'll weld it on opposite sides so that I don't get any warpage from the welding, so that the legs are fairly straight. Now I can always, if they don't come out straight, always adjust it with the leveler pads, but that's kind of my thought right now, where I'm going to go with this. So I'll show you more as I progress. That happened here. In a previous video, I told you that I tacked them out and then squared them up, and I did. And I tacked it on 3 or 4 sides. By the way, I did this other one too. But what I want to show you is, when I welded that out, it went off. And I welded it on different sides. First welded it on this side, then this side, then this side, and then this side. Trying to get it to draw, but can you see it? $18, 17.5. No, I can fix that. I'll put a spreader in there between them and spread it back out, but it just goes to show you, no matter how careful you think you are, sometimes when you're welding, it just pulls. Warps it pretty bad. So on the next welds, I will put a spreader in between them so that it stays fairly straight. But I just kind of wanted to show you that. Okay, back for the bandsaw. From McMaster Car, what I did is ordered feet, pads for the tables and the bandsaw. Now for the bandsaw, I ordered 5/8. They're 5/8 by 4. For the tables, I ordered 1/2 inch by 4. There's going to be 6 of them on the there's going to be 6 legs on the lead-in table, 4 legs on the lead-off table. So there'll be 6 of these pads on the lead-in table, 4 of them on the lead-off table, and 4 of the 5/8 ones on the bandsaw itself. These things are fairly heavy. I don't remember what they were. I think these might have been like $10 a piece, and I think these were like 8 or 6 or 8. I don't remember exactly. It's not listed on there, but anyways, so as I had discussed probably in previous video, what I'm going to do on the bottom of the legs for the bandsaw, I'm going to the bandsaw table, I'm going to weld plate with a hole drilled in it and a nut. So there'll be like a piece of 2-inch plate welded on the bottom of the leg, hole drilled in it with a nut welded on the back side of it, and that will just screw up into the nut, and I can adjust it to whatever height and then lock it in. But anyways, I'll take you over and show you. There is the 2 holes in the front, 2 holes in the back for the pads for the bandsaw itself. So I've got to I'm gonna go out and get got to go out to the metal supply house and get something. I've got to make something real quick for a friend of mine, a guy that I know that some stainless steel trays, but that's another subject, but I'll bring you back. Cutting the 2-inch squares for the bottom of the support legs on the table for the bandsaw. What I'll do is, this is the last 2 that I'm cutting right now. What I'll do is take it over, set it up in the mill, and drill holes in it 2 at a time. I'll chuck them up in the vise and drill them 2 at a time, and then weld the nuts on the back side of them, and then weld them out and do the legs. But I'll bring you back. Little shot of what I've got going on here. I've got all the legs welded onto the lead-in table. Put a cross support in at 6 inches up from the floor, just to kind of stabilize it between the short way, give it a little more stability from side to side. What I've done is drilled some of these things, a little oversized. What I've got is a rod. I'll just stick it down through there with a nut on it and tack and weld that nut onto that thing, and then they will get set up there and welded on. But I'll bring you back for that. Maybe I'll show you a little bit of the drilling process. I'm drilling 3 at a time. Put 3 of them in the vise on top of a set of parallels, but I'll show that to you. So I got it set up in the mill. The vise is just free floating. I'll just center that drill bit up. That's a 1/4 inch pilot bit. I'll just try and get it close to the center of that mark. Doesn't have to be precise. And now what I'll do is I'll just switch out the bit. I won't show you that, but I'll bring you back when I have it switched out. Okay, so I've got the bit changed out. Now what will happen is that it'll just find itself the center of that hole. That's it. Okay, here's what I do. What I did is I ground them off a little bit where the holes are. I've got a rod. Rod's hot because I've welded some out. Just stick it down through. What I'm going to do is just hold it down with my thumb and tack it on both sides. And that didn't tack. And then what I'll do is I'll weld it out. And that's it. There we are. That's how I do it. So I've got the bandsaw up in the air with a forklift truck, and what I'm going to be doing is putting these 5/8 legs on it, or leveling pads onto it. But I just wanted to kind of show you that I've got that going on this morning. Gonna put that on there. Then I'm probably gonna set the lead-in table. Now, the last time that I left off on the lead-in table, I had showed you how I welded those nuts on. Well, I got the squares on the bottom with the nuts all welded in. Now, I didn't show any of it, but what I did is I took those squares, and those squares are square, where that 2-inch tube steel has got rounded corners. So on the squares, each one of the corners stuck out from the round. So I had it upside down, so I was actually able to tack all four corners of the thing and then just weld it out. Now again, I didn't show any of that, but it is complete. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put the leveling feet on the bandsaw, and then I'll probably put them the leveling feet on this and then set it all up together. Now I've got to move some stuff out of the way, but I'm gonna do that today. I've got another project that I've got to get done before Friday, so involving, I don't know whether you can see it, that sheet of there's a sheet of stainless steel laying up in the metal rack that I've got to fabricate something out of. So but I'm going to be working on this morning, getting it up. Now I don't have the expanded metal for the top of it, but so it's not going to be set in there permanently, and I'm probably going to want to get it painted before I put it in there also. So but that's what I'm doing this morning. Gotta tell you, what I did is I had set that machine down, kind of just eyeballed it up and set it down. What I did is I took a square one off the wall and then extended that line out and measured it, and it's kind of probably it's within 1/8 of an inch from one end of the bandsaw to the other of being perpendicular to the wall. So I just wanted that way so that the tables, I kind of wanted it square, so the tables wouldn't be running at a strange angle parallel to the wall. So I leveled it. It's level both ways now. And what I'm going to do is just stick those leveling pads underneath the stand that I made and buttered up to it. Now I can't put it in because, again, I don't have the expanded metal for the top, so I can't set the height of it exactly, but I just want to make see how it kind of looks up next to it. But I'll bring you back for that. Just putting the legs on the table. Ooh, I'm not sure if you can see it. Hang on. Sorry guys, got interrupted. What I was going to tell you, I don't know whether you can see it, but can you see how some of them aren't square, the tap thing? Well, you know why it happened is because this tube steel got cut at a slight angle. So when I welded the squares on the bottom of it, they're kind of a little bit of an angle. I mean, I don't have to worry about it because these bald feet will compensate for it, but that's how that happened. Is it wasn't perpendicular to the bandsaw, the angle, it was up and down, and how it happened is because that floor is pitched, one of my stands that was holding the tube steel was a little off, and I didn't notice it until when I went to grind off the burrs on the edges from cutting. I noticed that it was not square. So, but I knew that the things would compensate for it. But that's the main reason for having this light lead-in table and being square and level with the bed of the bandsaw, is so that you get those straight cuts instead of a little bit of an angle. There they are, all up. I didn't have to run a tap into them. They went up. What I'm going to do is just kind of set them with a tape measure from the top of the table down right now. So when I kind of set it in place, it'll be close to where it needs to go. Okay, I've got the legs kind of set, measured. I'm not really sure of what the thickness of the expanded metal is going to be, so I kind of figured 1/4 of an inch, but I think that's way too much. But it's probably more like 1/8 of an inch. But I am just going to go back there, set the table and see what it looks like. That table's got to come out anyways, or it's got to be the guide on the top to run parallel with the guide of the fence, the backstop or the back jaw of the fence, parallel with it. Has to be welded on the top of the table. The expanded metal has to be welded on the top of the table, and I really want to probably paint it before I put it back in there, but let me bring it back. Again, I'm just going to set it in there temporarily to kind of see what it looks like, if I've got to make any adjustments or anything. Okay, so I've set it in here just temporarily. It was fairly close at eyeballing this thing. I've got to let it down just a little bit, but again, it was just eyeballed and I just wanted to set it in there. But that's what it's going to look like in place against the tape or against the saw. And again, I haven't leveled or set the legs yet, but it is going to be pretty sturdy, and that's kind of what I wanted, because I don't want it moving around. If I lay stuff on there and to mark it up for cutting or position it into the bandsaw, I want this thing have some mass to it so that it doesn't move. It doesn't get out of a line. So anyways, there it is, and I'm gonna cut this video off at this part of the bandsaw video off at this point, because it's probably getting pretty long. But the next part will be me getting it out of there, getting the back stop or the material rest against the back portion of it, get the expanded metal on, painted and set permanently in place. Probably also going to be starting on that bandsaw, getting it cleaned up and painted and ready for the table to go up against it, so that I don't have to move it again to paint the bandsaw. I should have enough room in there to do my electrical work. And again, I told you about setting that bandsaw perpendicular to the wall, and that table is running fairly parallel with the wall. I mean, I haven't measured it, but from the eye you can tell that it's running fairly parallel with the wall. But anyways, this is going to be, I'm not even sure whether it's part 2 or 3, and will be the end of it. Bring you back.